I think it's different for every client. I think the CAC to lifetime value is really great for contracts like credit cards, banks, phone carriers, life insurance, all those pieces. You don't have to put more ads in front of them to purchase again. Maybe it'll reduce churn. Maybe it'll, allow them to I don't know, upgrade, cross sell, upsell, whatnot. But for the most part, it's that first purchase that they're looking at. So the CAC to lifetime ratio, I think, is really good for subscription based businesses that don't change. However, there's been a lot of startups that I've seen applying CAC to lifetime because investors like to see it, despite it's not the reality of how marketing works. If someone has a company that's a product, like you can use Fader's buy till you die model to say, is this person still alive? What's their average order value? How many orders do they get before they fall out of the funnel? But that still requires advertising. Your remarketing funnels and all these other pieces, you're only counting the costs of the initial acquisition, but it still requires investment to keep them live. And I think it undervalues, prospecting on, well, it's prospecting on customers that have already converted, right? Which is already the more likely person to convert because they've already been through the process. They have experience with your product, and you're undervaluing the amount of advertising that you're putting to get your easiest people in the door again. So for me, the CAC to lifetime ratio is a good investor metric, good for subscriptions to say the overall health of the business, but it's not a very good marketing metric because of all the reasons why you undervalue that.
Right. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but from my understanding, you're more in kind of like the marginal IROAS, IROI kind of camp. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Sure. So with IROAS, that's incremental revenue on ad spend. And that's what more happens when you spend on advertising. So the counterfactual is I spend nothing, here's my revenue. I spend something, here's the extra. So that's the incremental. Now, I saw with experiments on publisher side, I see it, pretty much across the board that the first couple dollars you spend is really efficient. It does really well on a publisher, but those last couple dollars, because they have a propensity score, a likelihood that you're going to convert or purchase a good. Those in the beginning are really, really likely. And then as you continue to scale and increase the size of your campaign, you get weaker and weaker propensity scores. So what happens is you end up with this diminishing returns curve where your first couple dollars are super efficient and your last are not. So IROAS to me is an average metric. It is what did your average dollar do in terms of driving the average amount of incremental revenue. So this is why I prefer marginal IROAS as opposed to IROAS or any sort of just ROAS. And a really good example that I use to explain to advertisers is if I'm a publisher and you give me $1 and I give you $100 back, that's an IROAS of 100 and a marginal IROAS of 100. Now you give me a second dollar and I give you nothing back. Your IROAS is 50, but your marginal is 0. So why should you keep spending bad money until the average goes below your KPI? You should stop as soon as it's not working for you. And that's really what we try to do and measure is say, when does your spend become inefficient?
Um, Let me ask. So it makes sense to me with folks like ecom, where it's like, okay, I spent this thing on Facebook, and then someone had a average online value of X, and I can calculate the ROAS. So you can calculate the marginal as well. For folks with different revenue models, right? Um, I know you maybe like a subscription model or B2B where you might not be seeing that revenue for 6 months, 12 months down the line. How do you think about utilizing a metric like marginal IROAS with some of those brands where it's not as clear when you're getting that revenue?
Yeah, no, and that's an excellent question that we get asked a lot. A high value, high consideration purchase that happens infrequently. It's there's a lot of things that move you towards that decision, but ultimately you shouldn't be giving credit to the spend that just happens at the end there, right? So there's a couple of things that we look at. One is ad stock effects. So what you could do is run an autocorrelation function or a cross correlation function and take a look to see the decay. right? If you do a big spike, how much does the day before investment impact the conversions the next day and the next day and the next day? So it's they do this in television. Procter and Gamble's really good at doing this pulsing, where they pulse on, they let it decay, they pulse, they let it decay, and that's one way, and that's more of the ad effectiveness going down over time. The other pieces is, the consideration of zooming out and saying, what is your investment over longer periods of times or wider. With our agile mix model, it's daily. So with daily spend, we get daily results, and we see a lot of day a week effects, and saying, oh, more people happen to be in market. You're not necessarily using Canva, another one of our clients, on weekends or purchasing, because you don't want to suddenly do a PowerPoint or a Canva presentation on a weekend. Same thing with tax season, with your pools. It's all very seasonal and very heavied up, where how early do you have to spend before that considered purchase? So I guess this is kind of a winded way of saying it really depends on the business unit, and it really depends on kind of what their seasonal trends are, how they're qualified, and helping them make those decisions of when do you make your investments heavy, and when do you make them lighter, when do you make them super targeted, and when do you make them super broad. And that's kind of the feedback that we get as we do those quarter over quarter remodels or our weekly rescorings.
Yeah. One of the things that I've been thinking about on the pay team is um, we want to optimize towards metrics that we can directly impact, and sometimes the lower funnel metrics are more heavily impacted by things like product lifecycle. And so if we optimize towards those metrics on like a weekly basis, and there's a lot of volatility, it could be that there was, a product bug or something that happened with return customers. And so while the ideal is that we're trying to say, hey, let's get as many customers as possible, it might make sense for the paid team to say, well, we're really trying to optimize towards like net new email submits, because we know that we can impact that, and then let Lifecycle do the job. Any thoughts on that type of approach?
Yeah, no, I do like having campaigns that are targeted to a specific business unit or goal, or being narrow with your audiences. The thing though is the targeting is not always there to the narrowness of your conversions. So you're going to end up with conversions on other types of customers and other pieces of your business units. I remember when I was on Dell, Katie on my team, she plugged in all the scanner codes of mouse, like a consumer mouse, and someone came in on the consumer mouse and then bought, I think, $300,000 or something server solution for the company. It was an IT person reordering. So it's kind of like, okay, you're marketing to consumers a mouse, but then they end up buying a server solution, which is a completely different business unit of Dell. So this was something where it's like you can put your advertising out there, but you can't tell them to buy in retail stores or to buy online, if they're a new customer, an existing customer. And maybe you might heavy up with them. And we see sometimes like new customer promotions for certain subscription models might pop more. You might have more of a lift or more of an impact when you do a pricing change for a new customer. Like Thrive Marketplace, another one of our customers, would probably see that kind of new versus existing when they are targeting that new. But there's always halos to everything, so it's why wouldn't you count the halo if it helps your business?